The year was 1982, and audiences had no idea they were about to witness the rise of something iconic. Conan the Barbarian wasn't just another fantasy film, it became a defining moment in cinema, launching a new kind of hero and reshaping the sword and sorcery genre forever. But what happened behind the scenes was just as intense, strange, and unforgettable as anything shown on screen. Let's dive into the untold story of how this legendary film was forged. One of the boldest creative decisions came early. Conan barely speaks. In fact, the character doesn't say a single word for a long stretch of the film. That silence wasn't just stylistic, it was practical. There were real concerns about Arnold Schwarzenegger's strong accent and how audiences might respond. Instead of hiding it awkwardly, the filmmakers leaned into silence, turning Conan into a mysterious, almost mythic figure. When he finally speaks, it feels powerful, earned. Casting, too, could have gone in a completely different direction. Before Arnold stepped into the role, other major stars were considered. Names like Sylvester Stallone and Charles Bronson were reportedly on the table. Imagine how different the film would feel with a more traditional action star. But Arnold brought something unique, his physical presence, his intensity, and a kind of raw charisma that couldn't be replicated. Of course, looking the part wasn't enough. Transforming into Conan required a brutal level of preparation. Arnold went through months of intense training, learning sword fighting, horseback riding, and combat techniques. This wasn't just about building muscle, it was about becoming believable as a warrior. By the time filming began, he wasn't just acting the role, he had physically earned it. Interestingly, the story itself almost took a very different path. An early version of the script, written by Oliver Stone, imagined Conan in a post-apocalyptic future filled with mutants and advanced technology. It was more science fiction than fantasy, something closer to Mad Max than ancient myth. In the end, that idea was scrapped in favor of the more timeless, mythological setting we know today. That commitment to authenticity extended to the props as well, especially the weapons. The swords used in the film weren't lightweight replicas. They were real, heavy steel weapons, crafted by skilled blacksmiths. This added a layer of realism you can actually feel when watching the fight scenes, but it also made filming far more dangerous. And danger was never far from the set. During cold weather shoots, even something as simple as fake blood became a problem, it kept freezing. The solution? Mix it with alcohol. Yes, vodka was added to keep it from solidifying. The result was a strange side effect. Actors sometimes ended up accidentally drinking it during scenes. The villains in the film also drew from unsettling real-world influences. The cult led by Thulsa Doom wasn't purely fictional, it was inspired by real historical cults and more recent figures that audiences would recognize on a subconscious level. That's part of what made it feel so eerie and believable. The director's chair saw its own share of uncertainty. Several big names were considered before John Milius ultimately took control. His vision shaped the film into something raw, mythic, and deeply atmospheric. Even then, the film pushed boundaries, especially with its violence. Early cuts were reportedly much more graphic, forcing the team to tone things down to make the film more accessible. Still, what remained was intense enough to leave a lasting impression. Filming the action scenes came with real risks. Horse stunts were particularly dangerous, and accidents did happen. One moment involved a stunt performer crashing directly into a camera during a charge. These weren't carefully controlled, modern productions, they were pushing limits in ways that wouldn't be allowed today. Then there was the palace fire scene. What you see on screen wasn't entirely planned. A missed cue caused the set to catch fire earlier than expected, and the crew had no choice but to keep filming. The result? A chaotic, one-of-a-kind moment that made it into the final cut, because there was no second chance. Even the world of Conan itself was carefully constructed. It blended elements from various real-world cultures, Viking, Mongol, Celtic, creating a setting that felt ancient and believable, even though it never truly existed. And let's not forget the music. The score played a huge role in shaping the film's identity. Its powerful orchestral sound elevated every scene, turning battles into something almost mythological. Behind the scenes, there were also lighter moments. At one point, stunt performers were dragging out their death scenes for dramatic effect. The solution? Pay them extra to die faster. It worked, and became a running joke during production. The film's villain, played by James Earl Jones, was made even more striking with visual choices like blue contact lenses, giving him an unsettling, almost hypnotic presence. Off-screen, the legacy of the film continued in unexpected ways. Arnold kept one of the swords from the movie, and years later, it ended up displayed in his office when he became governor of California. But not everything went smoothly. Injuries happened. Cast members were cut, bruised, and sometimes worse, thanks to the use of real weapons and intense physical scenes. These weren't just performances, they were physically demanding experiences that left real marks. Even before filming began, the project nearly fell apart due to legal disputes over the rights to the character. It took serious negotiations to keep everything on track. Originally, the film was meant to be part of a much larger saga, a multi-film epic exploring Conan's entire life. But plans changed after the sequel didn't meet expectations, and the larger vision was abandoned. Still, the influence of Conan the Barbarian can't be overstated. Its gritty realism, combined with mythological storytelling, helped shape the future of fantasy films and television for decades to come. There was even talk, years later, of bringing the story full circle with an older Conan, now a king. Scripts were written, plans were discussed, but the project never came to life. And so, what remains is a film that wasn't just made, it was fought for. Every scene, every decision, every risk contributed to something that still stands as a classic. Behind the swords, the fire, and the silence lies a story just as epic as the one told on screen. And that's what makes it unforgettable.